All right, welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis, recording on Saturday morning, August 23rd. The final preseason game is over. The Vikings lost to the Tennessee Titans in what was an absolutely electric spectacle. Maybe not. It was interesting to watch Max Brosmer, and we will get to him shortly. Gonna do a little bit of a rundown of each position group. Over on The Athletic, on Saturday morning, published the final 53-man. You hear some stuff, you talk to some people, so thought I would do a little, update, kind of refresher in podcast form. We'll be back with guests next week. Looking forward to some of those. But it's a busy time, a lot of roster machinations, so feel like this has been the best approach to go a couple times a week on the podcast here lately. If you're new here and watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out. If you don't know me, I cover the team for The Athletic, have now since 2022. A lot of stories over there from this past week. Did something on Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, a feature on Max Brosmer, something on Theo Jackson, and then roster bubble, 53-man, a lot going on. So please go check that out. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. If you don't know about it, that is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. They've got branches everywhere. It's run by some really good people who are Vikings fans. Their online banking platform is really, really good, really easy to use, and you can set an account up very, very easily. Their information is in the description below. All right, we'll get right to it. And just look, it's going to be kind of a position-by-position breakdown, but also just thoughts on the numbers in the room, certain players to think about, to look for. And we'll start with quarterback. We'll go all the way to the specialists and end with the punter kind of conversation. So here we go. All right, quarterback. J.J. McCarthy, not much to say. It is interesting that he only played, I believe it was, the first preseason. No, I know it was the first preseason game. They had a lot of work in the joint practices, and that was always kind of the plan. But you see other starters around the league playing, so kind of interesting that's the approach the Vikings have taken. But it's very thoughtful. Kevin O'Connell's intentional with it, so it'll be kind of interesting over the next couple weeks. Just to get a feel for J.J. McCarthy in practice and how he's looking. Behind J.J., that's where really the questions begin. Sam Howell did not play in the third preseason game. He took a lot of reps with the number 2 team in practice. So if he does make this roster, the arm talent is there. There's no question about that. You've seen that in practice and over the course of training camp. It's really a matter of the decision-making and the ability to process the field and the offense in real time. That stuff remains a work in progress. What I would say, my evaluation, it would be tough to have a ton of confidence in him if you're having to rely on him for any extended period of time. But if he does make the roster, not going to be that surprised. And then Max Brosmer, with the way he's played, there's just absolutely no way you can expose this guy to waivers. I just expect Max Brosmer 100% to be on this 53-man roster. And it's not just like a fun story anymore here. This guy who is from Atlanta, played at Centennial High School, went to New Hampshire, transferred to the Golden Gophers, had kind of, he played really well at the end of his season last year with Minnesota. And you hear from a lot of people, like, if he had another year there, it'd be kind of fascinating to see what they could have accomplished. But, it's the anticipation. He played with the third-team offense on Friday night and did not look uncomfortable at all with Jeffrey Simmons just situated in his face. There was a third down completion to Lucky Jackson that was just incredible anticipation. There was another third down where he throws an out route to Bryson Nesbitt, and it looked like a pretty good defensive play. Also thought Bryson Nesbitt, the tight end, maybe could have caught that ball. And then over the course of the game, cover zero, he checks into Max Pro, pass protection. a slot fade down the field. Dante Fleming should have come up with the ball as a perfect throw. And then, just progressing in rhythm. He hit Silas Bolden, who couldn't catch it kind of near the ground. Could it have been a little more accurate? Maybe, but that pass could have been caught. And then the throw to Bryson Nesbitt for the touchdown. He just looked in complete control, accurate, the arm talent, while he doesn't have the arm strength of a J.J. McCarthy. Like, the arm talent is not really lacking. So, really looking forward to seeing what this guy can do. And if he's your third string quarterback, the looks that he can provide the scout team, I know that's like very in the weeds, and that's not really a sexy talker, and it's probably not something like Max probably has better visions for himself, but you can't really do much better probably in that regard for this defense. So I just fully expect Max to be on the roster at this point. Running back, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that like number 3 spot. Xavier Scott had a good run early in the game Friday night, 23-yarder over on the left side. Then he kind of tweaked his ankle. It sounds like it should be okay. But you also talk to people, and Ty Chandler has had a good training camp. He definitely has. He's in the final year of his rookie contract. He's played a role on special teams over the course of the last few years. So do the Vikings have enough confidence in him in that phase to keep him around, or will the Vikings want to roll with Zay Scott, who hasn't done a ton on special teams? Like, that's a question. Could the Vikings even look for a waiver wire pickup to be the number 3? Like, I wouldn't totally rule it out of the question, but I'd say it's still a little bit murky there in terms of what might happen. Zay Scott as a pass catcher stands out of the backfield with the screen game. His body type, he's bigger than Ty Chandler, and he's been a guy that the Viking staff has sought his development and just had an eye and monitored his development over time now. So, again, we'll see what happens there. I have other people around the league have asked about Ty Chandler, so it's not like Ty Chandler just lost total value in every capacity, just something to watch. The receiver position is probably the most interesting offensively right now, and this is not going to come to any surprise to anybody who's paid attention. I hosted Paul Allen's show on KFAN Friday. I led with the receiver. We talked about it with John Krasinski. We talked about it with Mike Mussman. We talked about it with PA early in the program. Look, with Jordan Addison suspended, the 3 guys who are shoe-ins are Justin Jefferson, Jalen Naylor, and Ty Felton. And everything behind that is it's just, it's a question mark. The Adam Thielen situation, it's been well reported. It's been documented. I've talked about it a little bit. I've written about it. Look, I think Adam Thielen makes a lot of sense for what the Vikings kind of want in the number 3 option to start this season. Especially if Jalen Naylor's hand injury kind of bleeds into week 1. But he knows the offense, Adam Thielen does. He's reliable as a run blocker. He has a rapport with J.J. McCarthy. Kevin O'Connell trusts him. His base salary for 2025 right now is just a notch above $6 million. So, there's a lot of reasons that it does make sense. The question is, does Carolina want to give him up? They have a pretty young receiving core with Tet McMillan, with Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker. How much has Hunter Renfrow, who they signed, how much has he really blown that Panther staff away down there? It's a valid question. And then if Carolina ultimately decides, okay, we will part with Adam Thielen, like, for what? What is their ask going to be? And are the Vikings going to want you guys know, monitoring, if you're listening to this show, you know how much the Vikings have valued picks within these trades. It's why they have operated with so many pick swaps. It's why, you just don't often see, other than like the Dallas Turner trade and the TJ Hawkinson trade, like trading picks that drift into the second round, third round, even fourth round. Like, you just don't see it happen. And I'd be hard pressed to find the Vikings come anywhere close to that draft capital while also paying any portion of Adam Thielen's salary. So, like, the summary with Adam Thielen, I'd say if Carolina is willing and they can come to, the 2 sides can find common ground on the, the cost, the package or whatever, definitely wouldn't surprise me at all. If it's not Adam Thielen, I mean, it raises questions, and I've gotten a lot of questions from readers and listeners. Okay, so if it's not Thielen, who's it going to be? Like, for me, it's players of similar ilk. Who has some experience with this system or anything close to this system, and who might be available that's not going to cost a ton. So, like, I mean, the one obvious name would be KJ Osborne, who was kind of at the back end of the Commanders depth chart. I mean, KJ has he hasn't played a ton since the Vikings let him go with the Patriots and with the Commanders. He's kind of bounced around. He isn't obviously the crazy separator. He has had drop issues. He did in that 2023 season, his final season with the Vikings. But again, just like Adam Thielen, there is just a respect factor, a trust factor, a confidence factor in knowing that KJ Osborne was able to know all of the positions in this offense. And that's why, I mean, I've said it many times. I've had a lot of questions from you guys listening over the course of the last couple of years of, like, why is there so much faith in Jalen Nailor? And beyond, like, his speed and his separation ability, it is the understanding that he does have of all the positions that all the receivers' positions on this offense. And so, like, that's where a guy like KJ Osborne could step in and probably, would work. Another name that's just kind of an interesting one that I've thought a little bit about is Robert Woods. Robert Woods obviously was in Los Angeles with McVay's system and Kevin O'Connell in 2021, I believe. Let me make sure of this before I go too far. But Robert Woods in 2021 was with the Rams, caught 45 passes for 556 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is a respected run blocker in the league. As a returner, he returned punts last year for the Houston Texans. And so, like, that, that's kind of a crossover. He's gotten older now. He was 32 last year. He's 33, but we've talked about Adam Thielen, who just turned 35. And the durability stuff has definitely been a question for Robert Woods, but he's with the Steelers. He signed with the Steelers for a reason. Their receiver depth isn't, it's not unbelievable right now. So would the Steelers be willing to move Robert Woods? It's a question that I would have. And would Robert Woods want to move from Pittsburgh is a question I'd have. But he's just kind of a name that, to me, would be a sensible one and kind of the ilk that we're talking about here. I mentioned the punt returning there, but I mean, look, Miles Price, when he's fielded the ball cleanly throughout this training camp, he's the undrafted guy from Indiana, had a lot of punt return experience in college. When he's fielded the ball cleanly, he's been dynamic. The question really becomes, if you're the Vikings staff and you know that you're going to need a win on the margins in a week 1 game in Chicago, in prime time, under the lights, with all of the pressure, with that raucous environment, can you have faith that Miles Price, who has never done it before at this level, is going to field the ball cleanly back there? Like, and he had a near drop on Friday night. He dropped one this past week in practice. He dropped one the week before in joint practices. So, like, if the Vikings end up rolling the dice with Miles Price and he's the one trotting back there in Chicago and he drops the ball, like, as a coaching staff, you can't sit back there and say, like, that was out of nowhere. Like, you could see that coming. And so, I don't know. With again, I've said it plenty of times. Special teams, I get it. It's not worth talking about like we talk about offense and defense. But it does affect these games drastically. And the Vikings have not had the personnel to be an elite special teams unit in recent years. And so to not have the personnel again this year and to struggle in that phase, like, that's just kind of that would be kind of an oversight, in my opinion. I know that's probably critical, but that's just how I feel. And so with that's the punt returner spot and even the kick returner spot, like, I just have questions there. And I'm just not sure how much faith I personally would have in Miles Price. And it's nothing against the guy. I do think he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. Like, these are just high pressure situations that require like an immense amount of just confidence. And that's, I mean, because it's the coach's jobs on the line in this kind of respect. So that's how that's where I'm at with the receiver position. Tight end. Look, I came into training camp expecting it to be a battle of, late round pick Gavin Bartholomew from Pittsburgh and then undrafted signing Ben Urasek from Stanford and Georgia. Obviously, Gavin Bartholomew, this is for the tight end 3 spot, by the way. Gavin Bartholomew, serious back injury, doesn't, make it back. So then it kind of becomes a little bit of a competition between Ben Urasek and Bryson Nesbitt, the undrafted signing from North Carolina. And Bryson Nesbitt had a really good night Friday night. He's been kind of impressive throughout camp. I will say, Eric Nordquist, the producer of 9 and New on KFAN, after the night practice, he's like, this Bryson Nesbitt guy is pretty interesting. And I kind of laughed, and you talked to some people, and he has impressed behind the scenes. In my 53, my final one on The Athletic, I had Ben Urasek. But I mean, look, if the Vikings end up siding with Bryson Nesbitt, wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. And then if they would, if they're also in, scavenging the market for tight end depth, that wouldn't, I think that's a possibility as well. I will say I've heard that there are other teams in the NFC kind of looking around in that market. So if, like, whoever the Vikings cut there, if they cut, Bryson Nesbitt or Ben Urasek, like, there probably are going to be teams that are curious about either one of those guys. So will be interesting to see what they do in that room. And then I will just say, like, with how the Vikings are going to want to play early in the season with 12 personnel, which is one running back, 2 tight ends, TJ Hockenson, Josh Oliver, like, those guys and the durability of those guys feels like it's going to be critical for this offense to kind of be what they hope it can be in terms of, establishing the run and physical identity, and then giving J.J. McCarthy a safety valve in the form of T.J. Hockenson early in the season. Like, those guys and durability just feels pretty critical. All right, offensive line. I had 9 making it in my 53-man. I mean, look, it really depends the numbers that they have at receiver, at quarterback, at safety, at cornerback. Could see maybe 10 making it, and the one who maybe would make sense is Joe Huber, the undrafted signee who's had a pretty good preseason. Like, when you have interior offensive linemen who have potential and trajectory, parting with those guys is not an easy deal. And Joe Huber had the very good fortune on Friday night of getting to go up against Jeffrey Simmons. And that was not pretty, but I mean, honestly, in terms of, like, practice and reps and tape to look back on, that's pretty good. So, I mean, look, behind Blake Brandell and Justin School, you got Michael Juergens and Walter Rouse and Joe Huber. And, like, do I feel great about any of those 3? In the short term, probably not. Could any of those 3 develop into intriguing talents? Possibly. Rouse and Juergens were draft picks, so to part with them this early, probably hard pressed to see that happen given the lack of major draft hits, specifically going back to 2022. So we'll see how that room shakes out. But I mean, like a lot of these, this is where, like, you kind of get to this point in the calendar, and I felt like, I'll just be frank, like, I felt like I'd get to Saturday, August 23rd and be pretty refined in my projection. And I just got to tell you, like, putting the thing together for Friday night into Saturday morning over in The Athletic, it was not easy because there's just a lot of moving parts here. And whether that is a reflection of a lack of depth or whether that just reflects on, like, the overall depth of the roster, I don't really know, but I do know it was not easy to just come up with 53 that make a ton of sense. The defensive line group, I mean, this is probably the deepest position group on the roster right now. I don't think that's why you trade Harrison Phillips in the way that they did. Levi Drake Rodriguez didn't play in that second preseason game. Thought he came back Friday night against the Titans and had a very good night. I mean, he was active. The hands were violent. His twitch and horizontal side to side movement is really there. I I came away from and I watched some of the tape because I'm an absolute lunatic and psychopath, and I thought Levi Drake Rodriguez had a very, very good night. To me, he's one of the 6 guys that'll probably make the roster. The other, behind Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Jalen Redmond, who's had a hell of a camp, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, and Levi Drake Rodriguez. Like the other one who I'd keep an eye on, Elijah Williams, the undrafted signing from Morgan State, has had a good camp. He made a play on Friday night on special teams, running down there, making a tackle. I thought that was, just a sign of his athleticism. But it did sound like he kind of did something to his hamstring late in the game. How serious is that? Does that open the door for a guy like Taki Taimani, who's more of like the nose tackle, run defending type? We'll see. But yeah, I'd say, Taki, the hope would probably be, even if he's not on the 53, that you could slide him to the practice squad and potentially elevate him in instances against other teams where you need a run stopper. Linebacker, I'll say this. Did not think Kobe King had a great night Friday night. Kobe King was the 6th-round pick from Penn State, kind of the thumping linebacker, more of your like traditional decades ago type where he is a downhill kind of, punch you in the mouth. But it felt like he missed some tackles. There was an early run where Julius Chestnut, the Titans running back, got out for a considerable amount of yardage. And it looked like Kobe King got, missed his gap, kind of got sealed, excuse me. So, we'll see. Again, just to see the Vikings cut any draft picks like that, the optics of that are not going to be great. So we'll see kind of what happens. And then the linebacker depth behind a Kobe King, like, do the Vikings have enough faith in an Austin Keys or a Dorian Mossy, or that type of a Max Tooley, like that type of player to part with a guy like Kobe King so early? I would doubt it, but I do just want to underscore, like I underline, just did not think Kobe King had the greatest of nights Friday night. Cornerback, this is another spot where, if I were doing an hour-long podcast, we would spend considerable time. But, Byron Murphy Jr. and Isaiah Rodgers, you got faith in those guys. That's 2 cornerbacks. Behind those 2, Jeff Okudah rolled his ankle in practice last week. What is the status there? It's not something that I have clarity on right now. And then behind Jeff Okudah, none of the trio of Mekhi Blackman, Dwight McGlothern, Zamiah Vaughn, none of those 3 have really taken the reins for any of those depth spots. So you find yourself in a position where Jeff Okudah is already a guy. You guys are probably like, Alec, can you have any confidence in Jeff Okudah? And while there have been instances in camp where he has looked pretty solid and he's gotten hands on guys and he is physical, down the field, if the pass rush is not getting home, can you have any faith in Jeff Okudah? I think it's a fair question. And then if you don't have faith in Jeff Okudah, then who's playing? And while the Vikings utilize big nickel a lot, meaning 3 safeties and 2 cornerbacks, where you have Josh Metellus and Harrison Smith and Theo Jackson, there are times where you need 3 cornerbacks out there. And so, this is where the free agent market, the trade market, the waiver market, it comes back into play. Like Stephon Gilmore is still out there. Would a Stephon Gilmore type be willing to come back and play in this defense? I would assume he probably would. He loved being here last year. He has great relationships with the staff still and teammates. Would the Vikings want a guy like Stephon, who is more these days, he doesn't, he's not a run with the receiver type of guy down the field. He's, he can play with zone eyes. He can do a lot of the mixing and matching of zone coverages that they want to, utilize. But is there another option out there, I'd say, who is more of the athletic, take a shot kind of guy who could learn the defensive system on a whim? That's another aspect of Stephon Gilmore. He can step in, he knows the thing. You don't have to, ramp him up in a 2-week span with very minimal reps. So, that is a spot I'm watching. And then as far as Mekhi Blackman, Dwight McGlothern, and Zamiah Vaughn, Mekhi was the draft pick. believe in the third round in 2023, so he'd probably get the nod, but it just hasn't felt like he's had the most consistent camp. And then safety, I mean, we'll see. Behind Harrison Smith, Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus. Could Tavier Thomas make the team as a special teams guy? Absolutely. Jay Ward, I thought he's had a pretty good camp. He's also a special teams contributor who has gotten flagged, I know, over the years, but Jay Ward feels like he's kind of come into his own, developed a little bit. So if there are 5 safeties, maybe those 5. Khalif Halessi's another guy who kind of a signing who was switched to safety, who played well early in camp. If he's cut, another team might take a stab there. So we'll see how the safety room matches up. But as I go through this, like the uncertainty about all of it is kind of, I mean, that's just like, you guys might be like, is there no definitive? But I mean, these are the conversations. That's why I've written in The Athletic, like this is going to be a relentless few days because there are a lot of decisions to sort through that are just not ultimately like so refined. So that's what I'd say. And then kicker Will Reichard's fine. The couple of misses on Friday night, I attribute a lot of those to the holding. Andrew DePaula is the long snapper, and then, I mean, it looks like Ryan Wright is going to be the punter again by default, and he has not punted well in training camp over the last 3 weeks. So is there a punter that's cut who you would have confidence taking a shot at, who you don't know if they have a holding report with Will Riker? Like that's pretty bold, but it's also bold to keep with a guy who ranks 40th out of 40, Ryan Wright does, since the beginning of 2023 in terms of the percentage of punts where teams are then starting inside the 10. So, just not another special team situation that just doesn't have an exceptional answer. And again, like if we get to week 9 of this season and you guys are like, why is it like the special team? It's going to be tough on the coaching staff and Matt Daniels, a special teams coordinator, because this is another year where if special teams struggles, like the eyes are going to be on you because of the expectations kind of everywhere else. So I hope that gives you a pretty good rundown and how I'm thinking about things as of Saturday morning. This is very fluid. I have my phone with me and plan to all Saturday and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. So little sleep, a lot of calls, a lot of text, a lot of scouring the marketplace to see who's available and whatnot. And that's kind of what's going on internally, I expect, over the next few days. We'll be back with some thoughts after cut day. I did that last year, kind of right around cuts happening. And then we'll have some guests going into Monday Night Football in Chicago at Soldier Field against Ben Johnson's crew. Cannot wait. We're almost 2 weeks away. This thing has flown by. It's been a blast. Hope you guys enjoyed this show. Again, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, rate and review us on Spotify, Apple. We appreciate iHeart, wherever you're listening. We appreciate that. Check out a bunch of the stories and features we've had at The Athletic. There will be many more coming this upcoming week. Stay locked in. Support First Resource Bank. They are our presenting sponsor. We'll have some announcements coming up on some other stuff and a regimented plan for the season from a podcasting perspective. But that'll do it for episode 106 on a beautiful, temperature day in the Twin Cities. This is Alec Lewis signing off on episode 106 of the Alec Lewis Show. Talk to you guys very soon.